My name is Jane Buckman. I'm the Executive Director of Imagine Museum, and welcome to our Zoom series, the IM Exchange. If you want to view other episodes of our exchanges with artists represented in our museum, you can go to our YouTube channel to check them out. Today, I am so pleased to introduce to you a friend of Imagine Museum and an artist with whom we have many of his iconic pieces on display. They are all crowd pleasers in which our audience always asks, how did he do that? Well, fortunately for us today, we have Brent here to discuss his amazing career as an artist and an educator. Brent was born in California in 1946. And Brent, I apologize in advance if this fact is overused as it relates to you, but you know I did research, and that your father was an actor in Hollywood. And actually, only for maybe a few of us might recognize him as one of the most recognized roles on TV, where he played Hop Sing as the Cartwright's cook on Bonanza series. I'm not sure if that upbringing played any role in your development of your creativity or fascination with making stuff, but it must have singled you out in some way. However, we move forward. You went to San Jose State University and you switched from studying engineering to ceramics. Your desire to make stuff, and I would say engineer stuff, I believe comes through loud and clear in your work. I also believe the opportunity to study glass for your master's degree was fortuitous, as it did change the trajectory of your career. After graduating with his MFA in glass studies, Brent then went on to work at the Cleveland Institute of the Arts to head the new glass program that just was beginning there. He retired professor emeritus after 35 years, influencing scores of artists who have chosen the glass medium as their material for personal expression. We have two of your students, Brent, also represented in the Imagine Museum collection. They are Carrie Russell-Poole and Mark Petrovic, who continues to teach at the Institute. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you educator, artist, mentor, and flame designer, engineer extraordinaire, Brent Kee Young. Welcome, Brent.
Oh, do I talk now?
Yes, you do talk now. You can say hello. And then we're going to run a video.
How are you guys? I guess we're going to just introduce me. First, please thank you all at the museum for supporting me, and especially for giving me that Artist of the Future award at your inauguration when you opened it was 3 years ago in
2018.
2018.
Yes.
I was so taken by surprise. I didn't really say anything then, but it means a lot to me to be chosen for that award, especially at that time in the beginning. And thank you very much. I'm truly honored for that. What I have today is a short video and then 4 groupings of slides. And instead of showing a lot of pieces, I've chosen to show fewer pieces and more about the inspiration and how the construction goes together, because people seem to be interested in how they're made. And quite frankly, myself, that's the part that interests me too. The end result is from all of that, but the real interest is trying to figure out how to build, how to make the different ideas that I have. So let's take a look at that video and then we'll continue along, okay?
Great.
This is one part of a process that's much larger. Right now it's tedium. I'm just trying to create this matrix, this line of glass that meanders organically into this area right here and fill it so that it's even throughout. So the whole piece will have to get this kind of treatment. And then we're going to build out to the next cylinder and then put it inside another cube. I'm originally from California. Born in Los Angeles, raised in the Central Valley. Modesto. Went on to San Jose State University in engineering. I had a friend at San Jose that introduced me to the ceramics department there. I had gone into engineering to make stuff. The way you built was so formulaized that the ceramics seemed to resonate with me more than engineering, and I had this kind of catharsis and decided that I would change majors. Because this glass that we're using is such a low coefficient of expansion, we can build in this manner, and it takes a lot of shock, so we can put the torch right on it like this, and it's cold, and it can go from cold to, a couple of thousand degrees in the matter of seconds. It's very durable and very rugged, and we're working with elements that are thin enough to take that kind of shock as well. I think that my studies in school in engineering were great background for understanding how to work with materials. Understanding the physics of this particular glass as opposed to earlier works that were done in soda lime glass helps me. In high school, I had a geometry teacher that was really great. His name was J. Patty. He made geometry so much fun. There were so many theorems and all this stuff you kind of had to memorize. But he taught geometry more like a foreign language. He'd say a theorem and then he'd have the students say it out loud and repeat it. He was kind of full of this kind of crazy idea, and I think we learned geometry through osmosis rather than having it kind of pounded into us. But I do go back to geometry a lot in terms of the way I construct things and look at things. Next door to the studio here, there was a Wonder Bread factory. This was a number of years ago, and they tore that down. When they raised that building, at the end, they were shaking all the concrete out of this pile of rebar, and they had a rat's nest of reinforcing rod the size of a house that was left over from the deconstruction. I thought it would be interesting and fun to go in there and weld that rebar together and then take a transit, line that thing up, and cut it into a geometric shape. I tried building a piece out of glass with that, and I constructed it in a way that was a matrix of interconnected glass elements. I showed that in the faculty show, and they were pretty excited to see the glass in this way, and there was a lot of curiosity as to how I was able to make the thing. So that was encouraging, and I started building in that manner. I like to say that life is long, and there's a lot of work left in all of us, so I don't think we're going to retire from making work. I think that's something that we're going to be doing until forever, maybe, who knows.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And I know you've done work for us. You've done our work for us, Brent. You've actually compiled works to show in different groupings. So this first group is in having our audience get more familiar with you. It's a little bit more about your inspiration. So let's move forward and get those slides going so you can move forward.
So for myself, especially early on, nature was a very important. Natural sciences, of course, and I spent as much time at the Museum of Natural History as I did at the Art Museum. Both places we spent tons of time at looking at things and being inspired. This is a very early work and what I was given for teaching as well, but the Cleveland Arts Prize gave me an award for this kind of work in the fossil series. You can move to the next slide, please. That was lamp work. For a long time, the glass community didn't even know how I was doing this. They thought I was engraving the images, and when I was lamp working the images, I started these pieces in the late 70s, and they continued to evolve through my casting period and other periods. And I stopped probably in about the time I started doing the flame work pieces that I'm doing now, the construction pieces. Please continue. Nature again, we traveled a lot. This is the Slot Canyon in Page, Arizona, a wonderful place if you ever go out that way, out west. What's wonderful about it is the light comes only in from the top, and you stand in there, and everywhere you move, and as the light moves, the whole seeing changes. You have to turn sideways to get through some of these places, but it's really a wonderful thing to see in nature. Sometimes people ask me to describe my work, and I say, like, imagine a tumbleweed, and then imagine the tumbleweed cut into a cube, and then imagine that tumbleweed cut into a cube and made of glass. So here's a tumbleweed that's kind of stuck. Here is a grain coral. That's another inspiration for me. You know, the network and the form of how that the meandering and the matrix of the shape for the outside. It's a direct connection for me. Here's another one. You can change. This is one of the things that astounds me is that we can be inspired by nature, but we can't replicate it. I mean, I could never be this articulate, but it's wonderful to be inspired by it and to use nature as a source for imagery. Please. This is a subdivision. I got it off the internet. When I left engineering, I was working all the way, when I was in graduate school in glass. I continued to work in California because the money was so good. I'd fly back on vacation and work for the engineering firm. When I finished graduate school, I went back there and worked that summer before I went to Cleveland. But when I left, I had over 30 projects that I was working on, and they were all late. I don't know what to say about that, except that I'm so glad that I'm doing what I'm doing now. Here's the next slide, please. You know, this is winter in Cleveland. There's a direct connection between water and glass and light and the things that are around you. Here it is, you know, a natural circumstance that we see in the wintertime. Next slide. Another description. Here's you know, when you're unpotting a plant from a container and you're going to plant it, it takes on the shape of a pot and a network, a matrix of roots in there. It's everywhere, what you can find for inspiration. Next slide. And here is a factory. It's not the one next door, but this was the idea. This giant mound of rebar was huge, and it would be fun to have a project where we could go in and weld that all together and then cut it into a geometric shape. Safety would be a problem. There would be a lot of things that we'd have to overcome, but it would still be a really fun thing to do. So next slide, please. And then later on, as I started this piece, I realized that it really was about light and how the glass captured light, and the form was defined by the way the glass was shaped, and you could see what the form was and what the intention was. So when you're looking at my pieces, you're not really looking at the object as much as the light that is produced by the object. That's a very important discovery for me, and I think about it a lot. So we can show the next group. What do you think about that, Jane?
I love seeing these images, Brent. It becomes even more apparent to me how you visualize your surroundings and how you capture this in your work. And what we talk to our audiences about are the physics, the math, the science, and the engineering that artists who work with glass must consider to make their objects. And when you see all of this, it really becomes apparent how the inspiration comes and then how you're able to manifest it. Mm-hmm. So I know we have another group of slides that are coming up, and here they are.
Yeah, I want to make the point too that the engineering and the science, I mean, I had glass and physics when I was in school. All those things that are in my background, they really support the ideas. So they aren't the ideas themselves, but they really help go a long ways towards getting the ideas done. This is a catenary arch at the, it's actually articulated a little at the Familia Sagrada in Spain. I got this off the internet. I would love to do that. It's
Brent,
a natural occurrence. Pardon me?
if you could lean in a little bit more
Okay.
because you're fading out. You were really good just a minute
that?
ago.
Is that better?
Keep talking and let's see.
Okay. So change that slide, please. Look at that arch there. And then here's a catenary arch. We use that to design kilns. It occurs in nature, and it's just hanging an element. And I think that there is no actual equation, mathematical equation for a catenary. But it's a physical thing that you can do. And change that slide. And you can articulate it a little bit. So here's one with a point. And then I can directly translate it in scale. Please change the slide. Onto a pattern in paper that is full size. My wife is a fiber artist and she makes clothing, but she makes mainly quilts and wall pieces now, but patterns were around us a lot. And you can stand this directly up. So the arch upside down. And in cross section, it's an ellipse. So in order to build it, I had to build all these elements to work over. It's kind of a scaffolding. So all of this is in glass, but it is not the end result. The end result is something that goes on after. So next slide. Here's a couple of catenaries with some of the interior structure taken out, an inside and an outside form on the way to the finished form. Generally speaking, I do work from the inside out. Here it is turned over with some stanchions that are built to hold the thing up and present the form. I did go away from using stands and armatures that were made of metal for my pieces right away when I started these pieces. And I said, I can use glass for them for the holding mechanism. Here is the catenary ellipsoid by at the Cleveland Museum of Art. So this is one of the geometric ideas that I use to learn how to build. They're totally from my imagination. There's nothing that occurs. The construction occurs, but this doesn't occur in it's not a natural form. Here's a piece similar to the one at the museum. If you look at the top, you can see a meander, which is a reflection of a natural element too, and reflects the elements that are in the glass itself. This piece too is a participating piece. Please change the slide. And it comes apart as well. It's very cool, and you can arrange it in different ways. So it's a way to participate with the piece. Next slide. Oh, this is right out of my sketchbook, working with ideas, inside, outside, how things work. Here's a question mark, like how would this look differently? We don't need to spend too much time here. Oh, here's the piece. Back it up one slide. Up in the upper left-hand corner, that's the pieces that you guys have there at the museum, one of them. Okay, move on. Here's a maquette. It's maybe 4 or 5 inches just to figure out how things work in 3 dimensions with the meander. And here's some meander. This is with the glass elements that actually end up being part of the piece. And then I make a full-size maquette. And here's some glass elements too that were part of the construction way prior to constructing the piece. Next slide. Volumes of solid revolution is a mathematical idea for determining a volume which you revolve around an axis. In this case, it's a vertical axis. And if you look underneath this matrix, there is an armature that I can spin that helps me define where I am in space while I'm making the form. The cylinders are that way too. So here I am with that piece. You can change that slide. So we've entered, put the piece inside. It's quite an ordeal to get that thing centered in there. I'll just leave it at that. It's kind of crazy. Okay, and here's a finished piece. These are some Ask me later about the idea of cubism, and I'll talk about it a little bit maybe later on.
Great.
That's,
Well,
that's kind of the geometric idea with grouping.
well, you know, we do have these pieces of yours on display at the museum. And for our audiences, they're really astounding to behold. And what I like to do is to watch people observe your pieces. And so they lean in, they try to understand how the forms stay in place, which, you know, you said is a complicated piece. They're trying to figure that out. And then they want to know, do those segments actually fit? And they are so amazed at the level of work and the precision of how you work. As we're getting ready to move forward to the next series, can you talk just a little bit more about that when you were saying it was that complex? Let's just so I can answer a question for our viewers. So how long would it take for you to figure out how to put that sphere inside of that other form? Because that's, you know, they always ask about time. And so as we're trying to load up the next series, you can tell me if that's that process is, how difficult it is and how long it takes you.
Sure. You know, the conceptualizing work is a matter of research. That can take as long or as little as, you know, you might get an idea in the middle of the night and it just hits you and you've got to put it in your sketchbook and work on it. Or some things like this idea here, I did a little bit of research on different kinds of boat forms for a piece called Quest. If I want to suspend a piece, depends on how big it is inside. I sometimes have to suspend it in the ceiling and raise the piece to it and then put one little element inside and connect it to the exterior and then move it around by heating that element and getting it into the exact position that I want. Once I get it there, then I can put a second element in that holds it. And sometimes that takes a couple of days to kind of figure that out, because I'll put something in and I won't like it and I'll have to take it out, start over, and then put it back in again. So yeah, it's kind of complex. The bigger question is how long do the pieces take to make? So the piece that you have, the large one that's right behind you there, Jane, this is about 1.5 years
Wow.
in construction. It's like, I don't even want to talk about it. It's, you know, it's a laborious, and glass has its own speed. And there are some people that are, like some of my students are very clever with blowing and they can really manipulate the glass well. And they're very well practiced and they can get things done really in a hurry. But if I want the glass to bend a certain way, if it's a certain thickness, I can't heat it up too quickly. I can't heat it up too hot. And I have to kind of let it cool as I go along so it'll stay in place. So yeah. So let's move along here. Here's the
Absolutely.
Yeah, here's that. You saw the sketches of the boats. Here are some cross sections on the sketch in the back of a full-size boat. Quest, the idea is about looking and searching. You can take it, what you can from that. Here is in space the endpoints of the terminals. The terminus is for where those cross sections are going to go, and you can change that slide too. And here is a better outline, and then the cross sections get the ribs get put up against this. They get stood up, kind of like a actual boat is made. Change that. You can see the ribs here and the beginning of a meander on the boat. The meander is the actual piece. The rest comes out later. It's taken away. And here's the matrix idea going on. You can see how directly it relates to the brain coral that we looked at earlier. The way the meanders meander around the form. Here are the openings for personages. I guess you might call it. It's a pair. So we're searching kind of together for whatever you might want to search for, change. And then I thought it would be really great to put it in a suitcase. So I built a suitcase and put it inside here. Let's look at this next slide here. Is probably the finished piece. So there's a handle, and it's an old style suitcase with the leather buttresses on the ends. It's a pretty great idea. Everybody goes to museums, right?
Right.
And
Nope.
here's an attic black figure form at the Museum of Art in Cleveland. And the thing I love about this piece is the architecture of the handles. The whole form is beautiful, and it must have been, here again, you're humbled by looking at work from previous cultures. I'm not a very decorative person, so I didn't want to paint or do anything else on it, but the form was beautiful. Here's the armature for building that piece. Here again, it's made in sections. This is the main body of the piece up to the outside perimeter. I think there were 7 sections that had to be assembled to put this together. Here it is in my studio. And
Incredible.
yeah, well, this is without, and here it is, the finished piece. This piece is out in California, and I want to shout out, it's the collector's birthday today. Happy birthday.
Wonderful.
That's what I understand. This is one of my favorites. You can see the river in it, how it meanders around the piece, so it's informed that way. And there's a nice crown on the top. This is another inspiring piece. I love this idea of the language of materials. I've been working in glass. If you're a metal worker, you're working in metal. If you're a woodworker, you're working in wood. Ceramics with a lot of clay. And this kind of does it for me. It's, just imagine this object as an anvil, what people do with it, the physics of metal, how dense it is, the mass that it has against the glass, and then the delicate way the form is put together. That's a nice dialogue, let's say. It's kind of an intellectual dialogue, though. I mean, when you look at a piece like that, you have to think about it. And I love being able to do that and cause a kind of a visual discussion between the audience.
So, we have the chair, and in the same way,
yeah, exactly.
that the people, they're always, can I sit in it? What would happen if I sat in it? I've never seen anything like that before. How strong is it? So that also really captivates. That's why your work in our museum just so much captivates the people and how they react to it, respond to it, and think about it, engage with it. It really is special. I did want to mention before we go on to the next series of slides, we did have a couple of your gaffers here a while back. And since we had them here, we were able to ask a couple of questions. And, those questions would be like, so how can he get those lines to be so straight and so parallel and so exact? And up until that time, you have those questions, you didn't know the answer, but your gaffers were saying, if it's not right, it gets cut out and it gets redone. And it's like, oh, so that's the time consuming work. And, but it's so appreciated, honestly, so appreciated by all of the people who have the opportunity to view your work. And so we're going to move in. What's
Sure.
that?
I'm going to say that they are constructed. And it was a new idea for me. I mean, everything I had made prior to that was monolithic, glass blowing, casting, and everything. So if there is, like the piece the Cubism piece that has the section that comes out, if there's a corner that I don't like, I'll take it out and rebuild it and put it back in. So, we're
Well,
adjusting.
Your work, and as we even move into the last series of slides, I do believe this next piece is really one of the tour de force of the work that we do have of yours. Again, the reaction is always the same. People look at it first and they want to think that each segment is the same, and it's really just a repeat. He must have done something and just repeat. Then they lean in and they're like, oh my gosh, that's not true. And then they ponder, well, again, how did you do that? And then they begin to interact with the piece. And we encourage, I don't know if you know this now, that we encourage the interaction by we invite our viewers to stand on a marker on the floor for the best selfie to take and to share in socials. So, and if you pay attention, you will find many faces with very halo of glass around their faces. And it certainly is a crowd pleaser. We know when people have had a good time at the museum because we see it then on their own socials of how much they've shared that photo. So let's move forward and talk a little bit about this series.
So yeah, the idea there is the engagement, where a lot of the pieces are kind of intellectual. I was looking for an idea that could be physically engaging. And this piece ended up being that piece. And this is one of those pieces that was, lightning bolt in the middle of the night. And I'd been thinking about it. And I said, well, okay, this might work. And, I figured out how to construct it. Let's go through it. Here's the armature for the cylinder. So the x-axis is the vertical line in the center, and that whole thing spins on the inside so that I can make a cylindrical shape. And here's the cylinder. On. Yeah. One more slide. So stop here for a second. So I build a cube around the cylinder and then figure out where to truncate it. So all the pieces are truncated at a different spot. At a different angle, so they're all, each of them are all different, as you had said. Now you can see where I'm going to take it apart. And here is one cube that has the cylinder in it, so it's built with the cylinder in it. And then I go inside and took it apart.
Wow.
And then repaired what I had taken apart to finish each of the cubes. Here's 1, 2, 3, 2 cubes, and it just kind of grew in the studio over a period of, like I said, a year and a half. We can move on. A little bit larger, just studio lighting. It's not perfect. Here it is. This is what's happening with it. So it's amazing to me. I was like, oh my God, I did that. It's doing that. It's crazy. It's hard to believe that's like that. So next slide. And this is starting to happen. Oh, and the idea was to have those cylinders, once we truncate them, all line up in a way that you could rearrange each of the segments of the cube, like the gallery or the museum could participate with the piece by rearranging it. You could have 5 sections over on one side, 3 sections somewhere else. The idea is, as long as they lined up and people could walk around the piece and look through them and be engaged in that way. So you can see that this is at the Akron Art Museum when I first showed this piece. And those look like ellipses, which they are, but it's still a cylinder. And they look like ellipses because it's cut on the bias in that way. That's cool. Here's another piece. This piece is at the Morse Museum in Augusta, Georgia. It's like the inspiration here is another dialogue piece, the previous being Cubism piece. This is called Snake River Shelter. And it's about traveling on the Snake River near Yellowstone and Windfall. And how those things might go together is a curiosity more than anything else. So I've just got to put them together. People ask me where I'm going. I am working with this idea of the windfall branch, kind of a figurative thing, and these boulders. We'll see what happens with these. I've just started making these, and there's been some revolution from idea to idea and evolution from within one idea where it moves along. So we'll see what happens with these. Somebody asked me how you know when you've arrived. This is second grade class here in Cleveland. I became the Artist of the Week unbeknownst to me. And they put up a little bulletin board. Some youngster found some stuff online and put this up. I thought this was great. And I use it to kind of conclude. Oh, here's the chair you guys have, the Windsor chair, and
Sure.
another piece of the museum. So there
Well,
you
you know, on the contiguous lineage piece that we have it sitting on black plexiglass.
Yeah.
So it actually has another dimension to it, so
Yes,
that it becomes very optical as well. So a true enjoyment. And we have collected some of our visitors' response to this piece. And so we're gonna load up that video now to show you some of the reactions of our viewers as they have experienced this in real life.
There is a particular piece that it's a square with a circle in the middle, but there's multiple, it looks almost like lace in a way, and just three-dimensional as far as the eye can see in this end. It is so beautiful. I have no idea how the artists did that because they look so uniform, each individual piece, but they all come together as one. I just love it.
So I think her reaction is similar to others also. So since it's, I think that as you've gone through all of the images that you were sharing with us, that now it's time to take the questions and answers. And I know we're very fortunate today because we have our benefactor, Trish Duggan, here. So Trish, would you like to say a couple of words?
Yes, thank you. Brent, your art is just so absolutely extraordinary. For me, when we first opened our museum and Imagine Museum gave you the big award, Artist of the Future, it was incredible to me how you could combine science with art, just absolutely extraordinary. And then when I hear about your engineering background, I understand a little bit more. But boy, have you taken a different path in life to share and uplift your art rather than, building buildings and homes. And, your art is so extraordinary. And I've gotten so many fabulous compliments and comments that are just, you would just love to have a whole scrapbook full of those because it's fabulous. You have just a unique and fascinating eye for some type of creativity with space and no space. Just your pieces. It exemplifies to me what's not there. And I myself was raised in doing business. And in business, when you evaluate data, the number one consideration to look for is omitted data, because usually human beings want to look for something that's there, but it's oftentimes what's not there, what's not said, what is missing, what you don't see, to be able to have a full analysis. And your art just exemplifies this to me. It's very, very extraordinary and different because you leave that space, which is that gap that allows us to really contemplate even who we are. And it has a scientific yet a majorly spiritual impact on people, I think, especially the long piece. I mean, that piece is such a favorite of all the museum goers. So I just want to thank you for choosing that path to uplift and inspire others like you do, because it is ongoing on a daily basis. People get to see your art. So thank you for living the life that you live and for being such an extraordinarily creative person. I appreciate you very, very much.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yeah, lean in
Yeah.
a little bit.
Thank you so much. That space idea, if I could just say something really quickly, I was asked a while ago about, this is having returned from Japan, what the difference between the art of China and the art of Japan was. And, you know, I'm Chinese. And the way I answered that question was, in China, you know, what's important is what you see. And a lot of the Japanese objects that I'm influenced by and the Japanese philosophy, what is important is what you don't see. And that kind of space that's there, they use space so elegantly. And the fossil series pieces, for example, you don't, the fossil itself isn't there, it's been removed. And what you're seeing is the evidence of what was there before. And that kind of space relationship to the objects, what you're seeing, there's light in space in the pieces that I'm doing now. And it's astute for somebody to see that in my work because it's so subtle. It's nice to have that comment, Trish. Very cool.
Well, you're very cool. You're an extraordinary artist, way, way beyond. So thank you for everything. Every minute that you spend on art will be an inspiration for many, many others for the future. And art is what lasts in all cultures. You know, we have the old Roman vase that you had. Art is there for people to view forever. So thank you for putting a future and an eternity and a forever there for us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Trish. That was really wonderful. Are there other questions from the audience? I know I had seen a couple of types, so if you want to unmute yourself and ask Brent the questions, now is the time.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
Very good.
It's
What's the question?
pardon me, my question?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I know that you are a museum and it's a wonderful venue for Brent's work. Well, we would love to, I apologize. My question is kind of very amorphous, but I want to thank you for sharing this with us. And I look forward to coming over and seeing the work. And thank you, Brent, for doing this wonderful presentation.
Thanks, Mary.
Sure.
Mary's from the Duncan McClellan Gallery here in
Oh.
St. Pete.
Say hello to Duncan for me, will you?
Definitely, definitely. He mentioned that he was going to be on the Zoom, and I think he had to jump off for a second. So definitely will relay that. And thank you to the Imagine Museum again.
Thanks, Mary.
So say your question.
So next question.
Say. Hi, this is Catherine Swintek. I put my question in the chat, but let me read it as well. And thank you again to Brent Young. My husband and I just love your work, as does my mother and my sisters. I'm wondering what pieces you have of yours in your home and how you're inspired by them.
I
Good
don't
question.
show too much of my own work. I have it in, you know, out in museums and galleries, a few galleries, but like I have a couple of the fossil pieces here. I'm particularly fond of those. The work that I'm doing now is too big. You know, my home environment is more full of fine art pieces. I'm looking around, and I don't have a lot of my glass here. I see it all in my studio, so I don't need to see much here at the house. So I have sculpture, two-dimensional work. Some colleagues I have, you wouldn't know him, but his name is Jerome Adlin. I have some forged iron pieces by him.
Mm,
And he's gone now, but he was an inspiration for me.
mhm,
Yeah, a lot of ceramics too from other people.
mhm.
Great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. And any other questions?
I have a question, and I also put mine in the chat, but I'll ask it. Your work is just amazing, and when you see it, it just raises so many questions about how the heck do you do that, and where does your inspiration come from? And you've answered a lot of those questions today, but one of the questions that always comes to my mind is the work looks so very delicate. How do you move it, let alone transport it clear across the country
Mm.
in one piece after spending a year and a half working on this? How do you move it without like going crazy about it not breaking?
There's a couple of things that happen there. Number one, the idea of the matrix is like a self-supporting structure that's put together so it kind of holds itself. There's an architecture school. They give a problem with a box of toothpicks, and they try to build a structure that'll hold 15 pounds or something like that, or try to maximize the weight that toothpicks and glue can hold together.
A little louder, Brent.
So the matrix itself is self-holding, and then the pieces, the glass itself is, I'm losing my train of thought here. The glass itself is pretty rugged. They are delicate, but they are not as delicate as they look. You can handle them, of course. And then each piece has its own crate. And I lined the crate with foam that looks like milk cartons and kind of holds the piece. We ship them by overground carrier, nothing by plane. Sometimes we put them on a pallet so that they have to be handled with a forklift rather than, and there's signage all over the crates that say, please do not shock, please do not drop. And we've done pretty well getting them around. So yeah, they're kind of engineered to travel. So
Having seen the crates, Brent, I often marvel at how the glass gets packed. And I think the packing is as much of a piece of art as the art inside of all of the packing. So yours are no different in how, when you open up the top and you look inside, it truly is its own art form, how you secure that for shipping. So it doesn't seem easy, but it sounds very deliberate. You know, when you pack it, it's very deliberate.
We have another question from James Patton. How do you choose the scale of your work?
how do I choose the scale of my work? I'm using 3, 4, 5 millimeter rod right now. And the smallest work could be maybe 14 inches or so, about 1.5 feet around there, in order for the matrix itself to kind of show the forms off. If I were trying to make a matrix that was matrix series piece that was say 1.5 inches, the scale of the elements wouldn't work, the ones that I'm working with now anyway. So I did want to make sure that when I started working with this idea that I wouldn't let the size of the pieces interfere. So some of the pieces are pretty large. I did a ladder that is about 7 foot tall, and out in Washington, in Tacoma, there's a Hotel Murano there by the Glass Museum out there. They have a pair of oars. There's a nice dialogue there. The oars are 9 feet long each. And so I think one of the things I try to think about is if the pieces can command attention, if they're somehow heroic or compelling, if the scale helps that, I might increase the scale to a point where it becomes kind of absurd for a piece to exist that's that size. And that is built in that fashion. So it says something about the glass itself too, the delicate nature of the material. So there again, you have that dialogue. So does that help you with that question?
Yeah.
Thank you, Brent. There is one last question that I see is from Susan Antoinette, and she's asking how heavy would the cylinder be?
How what?
How heavy is the cylinder and that linear matrix?
One cylinder in one of the cubes, or half of the cube, probably weighs about maybe 2 pounds. Maybe not even that much. It's not a lot. You know, you're seeing a lot of density of light, but the pieces are not heavy.
Thank you.
Great. So before we sign off, if there's not any further questions, I do want to make a few announcements, and we are offering $12 adult admission to Florida residents in October as part of our Sunshine Special. We also are offering our special Saturdays with tours for young families and the young at heart. So please check out our website for more information. If you're not a member, Experience Saturdays. I think, are you going to run that, Natalia? I'll let you know. Go ahead. We also, if you're not a member, we encourage you to become one to take advantage of all of our offers for membership. And as one last reminder that Peter Bremmers, our 2021 Artist of the Future awardee, will be here on Friday, November 12th. And our members are free to attend, and those who are not members, it will be a ticketed item. So Brent, I look forward to seeing you again. I hope it's in person the next time.
Yes,
and yeah, let us do that for sure. And I truly want to thank you for your time and the everything that you put together for this presentation today. I really do believe people are walking away with a little bit more knowledge about you, about your history, about your creativity, and really the beautiful work we are able to display here in the museum. So all I can say is best of health and good luck to you moving forward. And truly, let's see each other in person in 2022.
Well, thank you so much. And you guys stay well and stay healthy too, especially now.
Yes, absolutely, Brent. A real pleasure. Just always a real pleasure. Thanks for sharing this time with us. I really, really appreciate it.